All right, guys, welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Bruen, and we're here this week with none other than a very special guest, Mr. Arda Ocal. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Joe, how's it been, man? It's been a while since we've talked, probably far too long, but it's good to reconnect, man. How you been?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Good. I've been out of work for a while, kind of searching for a new project, and this has been something I've been wanting to do for a long time. So happy to be here and happy to have you here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, we connected through the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, right? And it was nice to be there the year that my buddy Jimmy Corderas was inducted, and it was a lot of fun and a good high honor for him for certain. So good to be back here, man. Continued success with the podcast. I'm ready to chat.
Appreciate it, man. So yeah, diving right in, growing up as a kid, what were some of your hobbies? Just kind of, growing up, when did you first discover pro wrestling?
Pro wrestling came in my life in the 80s, definitely the rock and wrestling era. I remember WrestleMania 6 being at the Skydome in Toronto. I wasn't allowed to go. I was still too young to go to a wrestling event, according to my parents, so I wasn't able to go there live. I watched it after the fact on VHS. My first wrestling show was in 97. It was a Raw at the Skydome. Back then it was called the Skydome. And then I just went to as many, like during high school, there was a stretch where I went to every single show that was within like a 2-hour drive, Buffalo, Toronto, Hamilton, St. Catharines, wherever they were doing house shows, WWE, and even independent shows. Like I would just go to as many as I could. WCW did some shows in Canada at the time too. I think they did a pay-per-view at the Air Canada Center, things like that. So I caught the bug pretty early, and along with, I would say the three biggest influences definitely growing up in my life were hockey, pro wrestling, and video games. Those would probably be like the three big holy trinity for me, I suppose.
Sure. And now WrestleMania 6, you touched on that, the Skydome, Toronto, such an iconic event in the history of wrestling. Even if you're not a wrestling fan, you may have seen some of the visuals from that event. It's so iconic. And as you said, you were a little young when it happened, but after the fact, what does WrestleMania 6 as a Canadian mean to you and its impact that it had in that area?
I talk about this a lot, especially with, Canadian wrestling fans. We, especially in Toronto, like it's a big city. It's one of the biggest cities in North America, but even growing up, we never really felt like we would get the big events, like I think even after WrestleMania 6, it very much felt like that was a one-off for a major Canadian event, or maybe we thought we would never get another WrestleMania. They would stay exclusive to the States. Obviously, the landscape has changed dramatically now, but back then it was very, oh, wow, we should be happy that we got one WrestleMania. And it was a perfect storm. The Skydome had just been built. They were looking for massive events. And, and here comes WrestleMania. So it was a perfect storm. Timing was right, whatever the case may be, right? But, I'll also say for Canada, for Toronto to get WrestleMania 18 12 years later, that was a big deal. I think that I wouldn't have guessed that we would have gotten the first WrestleMania at WrestleMania 6, but then to get the second one, I thought was equally as impressive. And, that one was a massive WrestleMania too.
And were you there in person for that?
Yeah, I was there in person for that. Funny enough, so my guy growing up was Kurt Hennig. I was a Mr. Perfect guy, and I never had a chance to watch him live. And one of my biggest memories of WrestleMania 18 was he had a 6-man tag before the show, like it wasn't even a dark match. I think it was on Sunday Night Heat or something like that. And I remember because Lance Storm was in the match, and I asked him about this match all the time. Not because it was like a super important match in his career or anybody's career in that match, but because he worked with Kurt Hennig, and I was like, oh, what was that like? Like just like that kind of thing. So uh, it was cool that I finally got to see my favorite wrestler live, and I brought a absolutely perfect sign, as you did back in the day, bringing signs, and he pointed to it, and I was like, "Yeah, he got me." That was like my
Nice.
big like fan moment that he pointed to my sign. It was
So you
great.
had pretty decent seats then. You were kind of close.
Yeah, it was like not maybe like the top of the 100 level, like it
Nice.
wasn't like super expensive tickets, but enough that he would have been able to see the sign. I,
Right.
I probably was the only one to bring him Mr. Perfect sign because he wasn't actually on the show, right? So
Sure.
I probably didn't even know that he was. Well, no, I think it was an advertised match, so I probably was the only one to bring a sign for him.
Now, the Canadian fan base, such a deep respect for the history of pro wrestling. I feel like, they really have, you guys have a respect for the old school and everything that, kind of led up to where we are today. You've always been so respectful. When it comes to somebody like Mr. Perfect, he's one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion, as well. I remember when he came out on that episode of Sunday Night Heat, he got a massive pop from the crowd in Toronto. And that just goes to show you, maybe the current fan base at that time wasn't as into Mr. Perfect, but the Canadians appreciated the history and all of his work. And that's why he got the pop that he did.
Yeah, I'd also say that it was maybe a scarcity as well. Like we see this with European crowds as well, or even back in the day, where if you didn't get to see these wrestlers as frequently as, say, an American audience or like an American town, we Canadians probably appreciated the moment more because, like me, I had never seen Mr. Perfect wrestle, even though he had wrestled in Canada, Toronto many times.
Sure.
The level of appreciation is certainly there. I'd also add to that and say, in general, Canadians are very proud of other Canadians that make it in America. Like it's still a very challenging thing, especially on camera. If you're an actor, if you're a broadcaster, if you're a musician, if you're anybody in the arts or any sort of public facing endeavor, vocation, professional wrestlers definitely included in this list. Canadian fans will be very proud of you when you return to perform, after making it in the States. And that's why, that's one of the reasons to me why the whole 1997 Bret Hart Foundation angle worked so well, because there was no way that they were going to turn on Bret, especially in that situation, because Bret carried, that Canadian pride so well, and he represented the best of Canadians. He was at the top of his profession, and he was one of the best wrestlers. He's one of the best wrestlers of all time. And at the time, he was arguably the best wrestler in the ring. And, Canadians felt an overwhelming sense of pride because he also made sure that that was part of him, right? Especially his public persona. And so, Canadians gravitate to that because it's not too often that happens, right? Because
Sure.
it's very challenging. And there's a lot of obstacles and speed bumps for Canadians to, go south of the border and make it. This is nothing new. This is the way it is. And so, when one does, the Canadian fan base is very appreciative and very proud, and they do not hold back in showing that.
Now, would you say that Bret Hart is probably the biggest star to come out of wrestling from Canada?
Probably. I mean, Edge is up there. Bret Hart. We've had there's been to Canada's credit, there's been a lot of great.
Oh, absolutely.
Like John Tenta's Canadian. He's from Vancouver. Gene Kiniski, Whipper Billy Watson. The lineage of pro wrestling is vast.
Sure.
But Bret Hart. Bret Hart was on a list that the CBC is a channel in Canada. It's like a national network. It's like a national news and information network, right? And it's like a very trusted, it's a very long-standing public channel, like
Right.
a broadcasting service. And they released a list of the top 50 Canadians in history. And I'm not talking pro wrestling, sports, just Canadians ever.
Sure.
I think number one was the guy that invented the scientist that invented penicillin or something like that. Like that's the level that we're talking here
Right.
in terms of the list of Canadians that they included in this list. And Bret Hart was on the list. I think he was in the 30s or something. But that just goes to show you how much reverence Canadians have for Bret Hart. He has a star on the Walk of Fame finally. You know, he is surrounded by other athletes like Wayne Gretzky and actors like John Candy and Martin Short and
Sure.
Eugene Levy. Like all the Justin Bieber, the mega stars, Drake, The Weeknd, like all the mega stars of Canadian music and acting and culture. Bret Hart has his place among them. That's how much Canadians and certainly wrestling fans revere him. Yeah.
Sure. I've always been a fan of interviews and conducting interviews over the years and just studying interviews and watching them. And I'm a big fan of podcasts and different things. And, I'd say two of the first guys that I really got into, watching them do interviews with wrestling personalities and even some that weren't wrestling, yourself and Sam Roberts. You guys were doing it long before there was a Chris Van Vliet or, anybody on that level. So it was great to follow you and just kind of, see how you did these interviews and the passion that you put into it. And, I'll never forget that, watching you guys do your thing. And when it comes to that, you discovered pro wrestling, you were a fan. When did you did you go to school for communications? When did you eventually, turn it into a job?
Chris Van Vliet, by the way, also a fellow Canadian.
Absolutely.
From Toronto. Yes. So yeah, he shout out to him. He's been doing wonderful things. And Sam Roberts, actually, him and I auditioned at WWE around the same time. Like, he's been grinding for a very long time. So I'm very happy to see what he's been able to do with his career. And like, it's so I know I'm going on a tangent here, but it's so different for wrestling broadcasters today than it was even 10 years ago when I got hired by WWE. The landscape is so different. It's like the collaboration opportunities are so vast now. It's very encouraging to see. Like, I love the landscape for broadcasters and even just for celebrities. And like, it's always been fun for celebrities to come to WWE and wrestle a match or, do a promo or whatever the case may be. But specifically for broadcasters, it's such a different frontier now. It's such a different scenario, and it's very encouraging and very great to see. For me, I did not go to school for broadcasting at all. I have a degree in mathematics, which is collecting dust on the wall. And the reason I did that was my parents were immigrants, and they were very, steadfast on, you need to get a degree that's going to pay you a lot of money and, make sure that you make your studies a priority. And so for me, I went to school, but nights and weekends, instead of going partying with my friends, I basically went to the local public access radio station to volunteer, or I went to the school newspaper and became a features editor or stuff like that. Basically hit the ground running, and just not because I thought it would be a job, Joe, but because it was fun. I just enjoyed it. And through that as well, probably like 05, 06, I started looking up local independent shows and leagues, promotions around me, and just started volunteering there, setting up chairs, helping set up the ring, typical stuff that you would do to try and ingratiate yourself with the promoters and the bookers, right?
Right.
And then I would eventually, do a backstage interview here for a DVD release, or ring announce a show here, etc. And then, one thing leads to another, and then you're doing more and have more responsibilities, etc. And concurrently doing that with broadcasting. Like, I had a desk job I was like a project manager for a few years, and I still went to the local public access channel, like Wayne's World style. Just, what does the floor director do? What did the graphics department do? What does the director do? What did the producer does? What does the producer do? So shadowing all those people just because I wanted to. And so that led me to doing minor hockey. And I did that for a few years, and then just worked my way up. And then where I got my big break is people might know the Score as a app, like a sports app now. Back in the day in Canada, it was a national network. I'm talking like 2009, 2010, 11 timeframe. and the biggest rights they had was WWE. They would air Raw, SmackDown, etc., and that was by far the biggest property that they had, because it was really a two. I'm getting deep in the weeds here in Canadian media, but
Yeah.
Bell and Rogers were the two. So TSN and Sportsnet were the two biggest channels, sports channels in Canada. And the Score was the little engine that could. It was full of like incredible talent, hungry talent that were putting on awesome shows. And but it was very much working from the bottom, percolating, like boiling water. Like there was so much talent in that building. And one of the things that got me on the map was literally right place at the right time, Joe. I was a volunteer. I was basically producing shows, cutting clips, that kind of stuff. And the vice president of programming sent an email company wide and attached a one-page document to an email and said, "Hey, we're looking for fresh ideas for our television lineup. If you have any thoughts, fill out this one-page form." And I always thought, we have WWE, like we have post-game shows for sports and pre-game shows for sports. I feel like the wrestling audience would stick around even for 5-10 minutes to listen to what experts would have to say about the show that just transpired, right? If you tell me as a wrestling fan that I can watch Raw and then I can watch people in studio talk about Raw that I just watched,
Right.
That seems like a very fair and proposition and something that I'd probably like. So that's what I did. I filled out the one-page form. I sent it back. 20 minutes later, I got an email saying, "Hey, let's talk about this." And that ended up becoming Right After Wrestling, which debuted in December 2009. So, I pitched and essentially helped create that show. And that show, which then became Aftermath, was on the air in Canada for about 10 years. So that's a pretty good run for a television show. Like most shows don't even last a season, and this one lasted 10. So I'm very proud of that. And that's where I basically got my break. And that's where I sort of thought, okay, maybe I can make a go at this, and, getting on WWE's radar as a result and ultimately getting hired there. So been quite the journey, Joe. It's been quite the journey.
Awesome. And let's talk about that. You were brought into the World Wrestling Entertainment as Kyle Edwards. How did that name come about? Did they choose it? Is that something you threw at them? And, just kind of tell us about the experience being with WWE and kind of what your day to day was.
So I knew that when I got hired that my name would change, and they said, "You can make a list of names that you would like." I loved the idea of having the last name Turk. I thought that was cool. My parents are from Turkey. I thought that would have been a really cool last name to have. So I just put together a big list, and I got hired through the international department, so they had people that put together a list as well. And as I understood it, there was a big, they usually have creative meetings, and at the end of the meetings, they go through odds and ends, and my name was one of the odds and ends. And it was said in the meeting basically, they didn't like any of the names, and it was brought up, we don't have a Kyle on the air right now. So that was immediately going to be my name.
Okay.
The original name was Kyle Richards. No one did a Google search. Apparently that's a name of a real housewife on one of the shows. So I was Kyle Richards for 5 minutes before they realized that and said, "Actually, you're going to be Kyle Edwards." So I didn't have a problem with it at all. I thought it was funny that my first assignment was doing updates in Canada. So the Canadian wrestling audience was like, "We know this guy. His name is Kyle now." Like, it was just kind of a funny thing like that. But yeah, it was, I mean, look, I had getting to WWE is a feat in itself. I was very proud of myself that I was able to accomplish that. The tenure was not like, I look back on it and I'm glad I was there. And quite honestly, I don't know if I was in a position to be able to, try and earn bigger opportunities than where I was. By the end of it, I was only there for 2 years. By the end of it, I look back on it, I think I was just burnt out from wrestling in general. I had been surrounded by it for so long that I think I just needed a break from wrestling as a whole. And I remember a few weeks before I got let go, I didn't even watch WrestleMania that year. I was part of the WrestleMania cuts after 1 year, 2016, and I just didn't even watch WrestleMania. I was just burnt out from wrestling. So I think it came at the right time. Uh, I've had my like cathartic moment where like now I get called back by WWE to do like documentary talking head stuff, and they label me as Arda, and they even put the umlauts on my O, which I give them a ton of credit for. So my believe me, like there's absolutely less than zero bitterness or anything like that on my part at all. I look back on it very fondly. I'm glad I was there. Um, in a way, it challenged me to be better in my career. So after WWE, I got some really cool opportunities to host hockey shows like at MSG Networks and do Rangers broadcasts and things like that, Devils broadcasts, and then ultimately begin my journey at ESPN, which started in 2016 and full time in 2019, and then things coming full circle with WWE coming back to ESPN now, or coming to ESPN for the first time through the deal with PLEs on the app. That allows me the opportunity to get back into WWE and dip my toe into that world again, which has been great. It's kind of like riding a bike. I hadn't been deeply ingrained in wrestling for a long time, but when I watch the shows now, it's a lot of the memories come back, but also a lot of the fun of it comes back, which is very nice because there was a period of time where I was just burnt out from wrestling, and I'm glad that I'm able to enjoy it now with all the more career and life experience that I have.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what was your initial reaction, working for ESPN and seeing that announcement, that wrestling was coming to ESPN? How did that feel? Because like you said, you needed that break, but you're welcoming it back. But how was that experience, just kind of seeing that it's coming full circle?
I got asked a lot. Did I know? Did I have a heads up? No. I read about it on social media just like everybody else. I had no idea. I was shocked. I didn't even think that this would be a remote possibility. Honestly, I did not know. I am not in those meetings, and I don't, like those are decisions well above my pay grade. And when I saw the news, I was like, wow, like this is unbelievable. I would never have guessed in a million years that this would happen, but I was thrilled because, I mean, look, if I'm looking at it objectively, I think it's a brilliant partnership because WWE has such a passionate fan base, and they do shows every single month, sometimes several times a month, or PLEs, right? Like sometimes they have more than one PLE a month. And WrestleMania is a destination event now. SummerSlam is a destination event. The Royal Rumble is a destination event. It's only growing. Pro wrestling, WWE is in a boom right now, and it's never been hotter. You could argue, right? Like it's just in many categories. It's just it's in such a great spot, and ESPN, and I know like the way I compare it actually is especially internally, on campus in Bristol, Connecticut, the announcement of WWE and ESPN partnering reminds me of when we heard the news in 2021 of ESPN and the NHL returning to each other, like that announcement, because hockey fans never left ESPN. The NHL and ESPN parted ways in 2004, and then almost 20 years later, there was a reunion, and I work on NHL with a lot of the people that worked on NHL for ESPN during the previous contract.
Right.
Like that's but just think of how passionate these people were, these, my colleagues were about hockey back then, and now, and that didn't leave. People were still hockey fans, passionate hockey fans that loved talking about it within the walls of ESPN. That's how I felt. That's how it felt when the WWE news came, because there's so many WWE fans within ESPN. We actually have like a Teams chat, like a Microsoft Teams chat of all the wrestling people at ESPN.
Sure.
And like it was the busiest. It lit up. It was like the busiest it had ever been that morning. It was
so people are excited.
Oh yeah, people are. I think that's an understatement. Yes, but yes, people are excited.
Now you say there's a boom right now, which there is, and like you said, it almost seems like a bigger boom than there ever has been. But a lot of people like to compare wrestling, current product to the Attitude Era, saying the Attitude Era is as big as it got, and why can't they go back to the Attitude Era? Well, when you look at the numbers don't lie. Now seems to be, bigger than ever. So, what is your thought on the difference of the two, and what one would you kind of put above the other?
I mean, let's add the 80s too, right? Like those are the three biggest boom periods of,
Yeah.
of generations, right? I think they were all boom periods for different reasons. And so like the 80s, the rise of Hulkamania and pro wrestling coming into the mainstream, right? Like the nationalization of WWF and MTV and WrestleMania and Saturday Night's Main Event, like the idea of wrestling becoming a part of American culture and fabric was solidified in the 80s, and that will always have its place, right? And that includes like the biggest cable rating of all time, right? The Main Event, the rematch between Hogan and Andre. The Attitude Era was the next iteration of that, right? Like Stone Cold Steve Austin was as big a celebrity as anyone in Hollywood for a period of time, right? Austin 316 shirts everywhere, and the Monday Night Wars certainly contributed to that, right? Like the idea
Sure.
of the NWO and big competition, and iron sharpening iron, and rising tide raising all boats kind of thing. So that was a very exciting time for wrestling fans, and wrestling was experiencing a moment there as well. But you could argue that this era now, certainly WWE's never been more profitable, right? Like it like financially, economically, as a company, it's incredible where WWE is at now. It's a masterclass in economics and business. Like this is the kind of thing you teach in schools. WWE's WWE's business model and how they approach their presentation and their all the different arms in WWE, marketing, sales, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, community outreach. Like it's all what they're able to accomplish and what they do is remarkable, and it's never been better, I would argue.
Sure.
Looking at it on the outside, from objectively from the outside, it's never been better. And now, with the television partners that they have, including ESPN for the PLEs, like they have multiple invested partners in helping grow WWE, and WWE is invested in putting out the best possible product. And you could also argue now, when you look back on, I'm talking about in-ring product here, Joe. Okay, like I'm talking the entertainment and the athleticism and the presentation of wrestling today versus the other eras. You go back and watch Attitude Era matches. You even go back and watch some matches from the Rock and Wrestling era, and a lot of them don't hold up today in 2025. Especially if your cup of tea is today's brand of professional wrestling, those matches are going to bore you. They're not going to be your cup of tea. But also, I would argue that the wrestlers today are in large part, especially the at the tippy top. I'm talking like the Main Event guys, the ones that are been in WWE a long time, etc. The wrestling is crisp. The wrestling is sharp. The wrestling is athletic. So you could make the case that the in-ring presentation, save a few people, like there were obviously like the Bret Harts, the Kurt Hennings of the world, but it is in a very good spot in terms of the athleticism, in terms of the storytelling. In many cases, certainly there will be people pointing to different matches and saying, "Well, what about this? This is terrible." Whatever, And remember, wrestling is subjective, right? Like it's in the eye of the beholder. It is an art form, and so that's what makes it fun to talk about and debate, right? Like otherwise, we wouldn't be watching it so much.
What are your thoughts on the partnerships that they have now with AAA and TNA, and kind of getting different promotions involved and really just broadening their exposure?
I think it's great. I remember the days when I was in the independents in the 2000s, and you like there was no such thing. Like you would be able to book TNA talent back then, and that was out of necessity, right? Like TNA wasn't able to supplement their income to the point where they could work, or many wrestlers could work exclusively in TNA. So they were taking bookings elsewhere, whether it was independent shows or Comic Cons appearances, etc. And many wrestlers still do that. Don't get me wrong. Like, but what I mean is, they were doing that to survive as opposed to supplement, as opposed to bolstering their income in a way. So I feel like the landscape of pro wrestling right now is such that it's very good for the wrestlers. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and going back to that idea of collaboration, like it just feels like there are more opportunities to get noticed. There are more opportunities and more pathways to get to that level of success that the wrestlers are achieving or hoping to achieve. And that comes through these partnerships as well. Like, I think that like the AAA partnership has been terrific in my opinion. Like, it's been a lot of fun to watch. And Dominic Mysterio's doing amazing things in AAA. As the mega campeon, and I look forward to those matches. And Joe Hendry, obviously, with TNA, and I could see him being a WWE champion one day. He was at WrestleMania. I mean, like that. Yeah. These are the kinds of things that you would never fathom even 10 years ago, right? Like, right. It would be such an outlandish concept, but that's the beauty of wrestling, right? Like, it just continuously surprises you and delights you, and it's that's the secret sauce to me. It's just the beauty of what pro wrestling can do for fans and for the industry as a whole.
And as you said, there was that boom in the 80s, boom in the 90s with the NWO, and there's a boom now. What's your personal favorite era of pro wrestling, if you could pick one?
Honestly, the early 90s. I loved the new generation. Like, I know a lot of people call it the lean years, but oh man, I was so into it. The occupation gimmicks. Yeah. I loved how I look back. This is with hindsight. I think, let me rephrase this, Joe. I love learning. Like, I'm a big fan of podcasts that go into granular detail. I will listen to interviews or podcasts with wrestlers from that era, and yeah. I will listen to any pay-per-view, any event that happened from, let's say, 1990 to 1996. That area, like that time frame, I would happily listen to any granular detail about any event. Like, I don't know, maybe that was at the height of my, like, waking up on Saturday mornings and watching Superstars. X-Men was on before that, right. Like, that was my jam. So I have very fond memories, but that's my personal favorite. If I look back on it, I would say the 80s probably have the biggest impression on me. I was probably at the height of my fandom during the Attitude Era. Yeah. And then I wonder, Joe, how we're going to look back on Cena's era, like in 20 years, when it's like really done, and there's been different eras that have come forth. Like, I wonder, like that Ruthless Aggression era, the PG era, as it's called. Like, I wonder where wrestling fans, or how we will speak about it, because even with Hogan and Austin and The Rock, like, I don't think it's simply an on-camera presentation to call John Cena the greatest of all time. Like, in many categories, he's well exceeded every other superstar available, Like, yeah. Sure, maybe he was never at his height hotter than Hogan at his height or Austin at his height, right? Like, sure. Austin at his height was maybe the most popular and the most significant professional wrestler ever. If you were comparing, like, whatever their highest moment was, yeah, Steve Austin was probably reached the highest point ever possible, right? I would guess, right. in like mainstream consciousness.
Yeah, I
but
agree with that.
Yeah, like I mean, Hogan had probably a longer sustained run at a higher level, maybe, but Steve Austin had a. I mean, you could debate that, but John Cena was in the vicinity for 20 years. Like it's that that's I hope that when in 50 years or whatever, we don't lose sight of that, because it's a pretty remarkable achievement, and he was relied on to carry the industry essentially for stretches of time.
Sure. And this year he's hanging it up. 2025, the Cena farewell tour will be coming to an end, and hopefully we'll see him from time to time kind of helping the younger talent. Maybe he'll do some backstage stuff or NXT or whatever it may be. Now that his time is coming to an end, who do you think the next John Cena will be? Who will that next megastar be? Is it somebody that's there now, you think, or do you think we're going to kind of see him come, down the road?
I honestly thought it would be Cody Rhodes. I thought that was the natural baton pass at SummerSlam. I honestly thought that one of the big accomplishments this year was John Cena essentially saying, "Cody, you are the next one. Like you are the one that's going to be the face that runs the place, that that takes over for a bulk of the company appearances and the Make-A-Wish requests, and being the one that will go above and beyond with a smile on his face, representing the company like John Cena did." Like I thought that was, and actually Cody said it in a podcast with Bruce Pritchard recently on his show. He said, like that was one of the things that I said before I came back to WWE. Like, I want to be the next John Cena essentially in that role, and so the QB1 as said on air, right? So I think that's very logical, and I think that Cody certainly has the ability to do that, and I would guess that who else could be. I mean, what I like about the talent in WWE right now is that there's no shortage of people that are very good on camera and
Sure.
and could occupy, like, can do that. Like I've been watching a lot of like WWE interviews lately, like outside of the Raw and SmackDown, etc. And you can tell like a lot of the superstars are, they want something like that. Like they're
Sure.
very, like, Drew McIntyre is a good example too. Like let's not dismiss all the work that he did during the pandemic.
Right.
Like he was the face of WWE during the pandemic, and he main evented a WrestleMania in front of nobody, and he, and he's. I said this on X the other day when I did a WrestlePalooza thing where I took over the SportsCenter account. If you asked, how we love as wrestling fans to be like, hey, this wrestler, do you think they would be a star in every era? Like, could we put them in the 30s and in the turn of the century and he'd be a star, or in the 50s or in the 80s? Like,
Right.
Drew McIntyre to me would be a star in every decade of pro wrestling. Like he is my answer to that question. He
Sure.
would be a star in every decade, and so he's another guy that you could rely on. Like there's plenty of those stars that are in WWE right now.
They really have a great roster right now. It's deep and so much talent, and you can easily criticize a company for maybe underutilizing certain people, but I think they've been doing a good job with kind of showcasing everybody. You can't have everybody on the top at the same time, and everybody's had their moment, with Penta, with Cody, and all these guys, Drew, and it's great. I think they have so much, such a large pool to choose from at this time, and maybe some of the past eras they didn't even have, I don't think, this much quality talent to choose from. This is really a good era to be in as a fan,
Absolutely. There's plenty of superstars that could be a potential world champion. Like, to your point, put it this way. Let's say Dominic Mysterio was at his height right now in 1993, 94.
Okay.
He's going to be world champ.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like 95, sure. Like he would be. Forget about the size, you know what I mean? I'm talking about like the clout and the response and the body of work.
Yeah.
Like Dom could be a champion today, but I get to your point though, the luxury is you don't have to rush him as to become a champion today.
Right.
you can slow build that and slow play it as much as you want, because I think that he's going to remain hot for the duration of the wait because he's so good. Like there was a match, dude, like that match against Rusev on Raw. What a great heel match. That match was awesome. Like he was such a great heel in that match. Like Rusev had 98% of the offense. He's throwing Rusev around. Rusev's throwing Dom around, suplex, flipping him over his head, belly to backs, like basically asserting his dominance, right? Like Rusev looking like a monster in there, as he should, because he's like 3 times the size. Yeah. Dom has to exit the ring, cowardly heel move, to get his breath and to escape danger. And then how does he win the match? Oh, ref distracted, low blow, roll up. That's all you need. And the crowd loved it. They were cheering him.
Right, exactly.
It's amazing.
And, to what you were saying, the new generation era is actually my favorite era as well. So early into mid 90s, loved all the gimmicks, the characters. I feel like 1994 specifically was such a solid year if you look at it as a whole. SummerSlam with the Chicago United Center.
Yep.
Brett and Owen in a steel cage.
So good.
Just, that build up to Undertaker versus Undertaker as a kid. You got to respect that. I mean, it's so good. And, the big casket match at the Royal Rumble with Yokozuna, 1994 was just, I think, from a character building standpoint and storyline, like just a great year. It really was.
Yeah. And the Bret Owen at WrestleMania 10. That's still one of my favorite WrestleMania matches. I loved it. Oh, yeah. So good. It was great. Even the beginning of the match, Joe, where they lock up and both like equal push apart, and Owen's cheering like he won the match.
Yeah,
he's like, yeah. Oh, so good.
One of the best,
Yeah.
Rewinding 2013, you hosted the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame with Howard Finkel.
Yes.
What are your personal memories of Howard, and when you eventually, went on to WWE? Any experiences with Howard personally?
Yeah, Howard was the best. He was so good to me. I would stop by his desk once a week. I'd go into the old Titan Tower, and I'd just like walk around because I'd love to, basically nerd out about wrestling at the time for sure. And then Fink was there, and I wouldn't even say hi. Like I wouldn't stop by and be like, "Hey man, how's it going?" I would literally stop in his office, and I would just throw him a random wrestling trivia question. So I'd walk in, and I'd be like, "Who was the Intercontinental Champion in December 1992? And he'd be like, "Well, that was the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. How you doing, Arda?" Like something like that. That was him. It was awesome. So yeah, I miss him. He was awesome. Loved his Mets. Loved pro wrestling, and what great guy.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can outthink the Fink. He was a walking encyclopedia. It's so funny. Such a good guy. But how about Mean Gene Okerlund? Any personal experiences with him during your time there?
He was very good to me. He would come once a month for Vintage Collection, and we would spend a lot of time together, either go get dinner or, he loved having a Kettle One at the Capitol Grill, so we would go sit down. Even if I was, nursing a club soda, he would just, tell me stories and just, advice. He was a hockey guy too, because his son was drafted by the Islanders. He played for Team USA at the Olympics, and so he had that hockey connection. But Gene was growing. That was like Fink too, but Gene was sort of the first guy in wrestling that I was like, that guy has an awesome job. Like I never grew up thinking I could be a broadcaster because I didn't know. I didn't have anybody in the industry. I didn't have friends or family. I didn't have any sort of connection at all. And I didn't think that I would ever even learn how or where or what. So, but Mean Gene was the first guy to me that I was like, wow, this job is awesome. And this guy must have the coolest life, Yeah. So it was really great that, sometimes they say don't meet your heroes. That is not the case with either Howard or Gene to me, because they were amazing to me.
Yeah, 2 top-notch guys that are missed for sure, And I mean, it's important that we talk about them because, those are people that should not be forgotten and should live on,
Absolutely.
ESPN, the leader in sports. So when it comes to that, SportsCenter, such an iconic show, what has that whole experience been like? How does it feel to be a part of SportsCenter?
It's great. I just crossed 500, which is a cool milestone for me across all platforms, not just TV, but all the different platforms that we host SportsCenter shows. We even have a SportsCenter for you now on the ESPN app in the Verts tab, where it's basically a curated SportsCenter for you or for the sports fan, for you individually. And I actually do WWE updates for them now. On those episodes. So after Raw and SmackDown, the day after, you'll usually see me doing an update on the shows, which is a lot of fun. It's been great, honestly. I never when I got hired by ESPN, I never thought that would be an option for me. I never thought that would be something that I'd be able to contribute to. And SportsCenter, even in Canada before SportsCenter, it became TSN SportsCenter. It was Sports Desk, I remember, and it was like a similar show, but I grew up on that, I didn't necessarily get a lot of the ESPN coverage growing up. But, having been around now, like the Chris Bermans of the world and, the Steve Levy's and those that have been doing sports centers for a very, very long time, I've been blessed to be able to learn from them and to also be able to just soak it all in and be a very, very small part of this institution in American television history. SportsCenter's been on the air for over 40 years. And for me to have played some part in that is, some very small part in that is still a thrill for me and a career highlight for me, because I can say that I've done it. And it's definitely on the LinkedIn resume. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that. That's for sure. Now, you mentioned Gene Okerlund. We talked about Howard Finkel. Is there another announcer or commentator, ring announcer, host over the years, any era, that was just a personal favorite other than Howard or Gene?
Yeah, Jim Ross was great. Obviously the soundtrack of the Attitude Era. Jim Ross was I grew up on Gorilla Monsoon. I loved Gorilla Monsoon. And when Jim Ross came around, it was kind of eye-opening because it was such a different way to present pro wrestling, right? Like he very much presented it like it was like a sport, like it's how it felt when Jim Ross was presenting it. So I appreciated that. Jim Ross always has a special place in the hearts of pro wrestlers. A lot of people consider him the greatest pro wrestling announcer of all time. He would say Gordon Soley, but a lot of people would say Jim Ross. So, and it's hard to argue that. There's a lot. Like I just find that the role of a pro wrestling broadcaster fascinating. Like it's just, it's a unique position. I think of a guy like Corey Graves, for example. Like I was there at WWE when he couldn't wrestle anymore and he had to sort of think about what he was going to do next in his life. And he tried a bunch of different things, and broadcasting came naturally to him. And he would do the Raw pre-show. That's how we would connect every week. He'd come to Stanford to do the Raw pre-show. And then eventually his career led him to doing analyst work at the desk, which he's absolutely thrived in. Like even now, like Joe Tessitore is he's crushing it. Like he's such a great pro wrestling announcer. Like, but there was no doubt, like he's one of the great announcers of our generation. So he's absolutely crushing it. And Wade Barrett does a fantastic job. Big E is such a great analyst on the pre and post shows. So I would relish the opportunity to work with them again. In some capacity, because they're such talented people, and it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Rewinding to 2001 briefly. 2002. The WWF became the WWE. When that process took place, what were your thoughts as a fan, kind of going through that whole thing? How do you think it turned out? With the whole invasion and that whole time period, the acquisition of WCW around the same time, just before it. That time period there.
I went to WWF's website and it became WWE, and I thought it was hacked. That's how I just learned about it. I didn't know. I was like, what's happening here? Oh, something happened, and I just had to search and learn and understand. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know that any of this was happening.
Yeah.
So that's how I discovered the Get the F Out campaign, as it was famous back then. The invasion. So like with the benefit of hindsight and understanding the intricacies of everything, like the contracts, etc. Like not every main event WCW star's contract was expiring, and some of them were very happy to sit at home and collect a large paycheck. Like I can understand that. So it was, all the talent that would have made an invasion truly special were available at the time. But I look back on it and yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would say that the invasion could have been something more special than it was or bigger than it was. But I'm glad that a lot of WCW talent ended up finding success in WWE. Like Booker T is a great example. Like he had a great WWE run, right? Like King Booker was awesome, world champion Booker T. Like and he still contributes today, right? He's awesome. I love Booker T. He was great to work with in WWE too. But the invasion specifically, like, I think it's just it's just a unfortunate scenario in many cases that we couldn't have everybody available at the same time and willing to participate, Yeah. So that probably would have made it so much that could have been, if all the stars aligned, let me say it like this. If all the stars aligned and if all the contracts were at the same time and lined up, or ended at the same time and lined up with the purchase of WCW, and all of that main event talent were available to work and willing to work at the same time, and it sort of was like a Nexus thing, like the that one segment with the Nexus where they beat down John Cena and took apart the ring, like if it was something like that, but with all the main event WCW stars in some way, shape, or form, to me, that would have, the possibility was there for us to talk about that as one of the biggest storylines in pro wrestling history, right?
Yeah.
It didn't end up like that, but there's a lot more than meets the eye, I suppose, than, that we know now.
Right. Now, we touched base on WrestleMania, 2 major stops in Canada with WrestleMania 6, WrestleMania 18. If you could only choose one, what, in your opinion, is the greatest WrestleMania of all time?
Of all of them?
All of them.
17 comes to mind. That top to bottom, that was a great show, right? 17, 19, those two were excellent shows from top to bottom. Yeah. Those are the ones that jump out at me. I mean, like, you have to put Shawn and Taker at 25 on a list, right? I don't know if it's like entire show, but like that match was amazing. But maybe one of the best matches of all time, maybe the best match of all time. So that's up there. Cody finally winning against Roman, like that, like, having the tag match the night before and then them finally winning, and then everything that happened in the last like 4 minutes of that match was special. But yeah, if you're talking like show from start to finish, 17 and 19 were very good.
I agree. 17 is my favorite. I mean, it's just top to bottom, unbelievable card.
Yeah.
And it was great to see the gimmick battle royal, all the old timers come back.
That's the one. That's the one.
Fantastic. But your Mount Rushmore when it comes to pro wrestling, it's a question you often hear, but I'd like to get your opinion on that. Top 4 superstars, any time period.
See that, like, this is such a fascinating question because people are just going to put their impression, right? Like, if you were to say Hogan, Andre, Austin, Cena, a lot of people would buy that Mount Rushmore, right?
Yeah.
But if you put Taker on a Mount Rushmore, for many categories, people would also agree. If you put The Rock on a Mount Rushmore, people, like, in different categories, right?
Sure.
Like, I know that this is a very boomer statement to make. You have to put Jim Londos on a pro wrestling Mount Rushmore. Like that, we don't talk about him enough because he was like from the 30s and 40s, but what he meant to pro wrestling at that time, by all categories that you would judge a pro wrestler today, he should be on a Mount Rushmore. Like that, he was that guy for many, many decades back then, right?
Sure.
Now, if we're cutting the time period to the 80s to now, then yeah, I get that. But if you're saying forever, then Gorgeous George should probably be on a Mount Rushmore because he literally, was the first pro wrestling star on television, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's my thought process when I'm thinking of a Mount Rushmore.
Right.
But my Mount Rushmore of in-ring matches differs from my Mount Rushmore of overall professional wrestlers, So
Sure.
let me give you my Mount Rushmore of in-ring workers. How about that?
Yeah.
Mr. Perfect, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and Bastion Booger. That would be my Mount Rushmore. Yeah.
Mr. Mike
who
Shaw.
would you put at fourth? Eddie Guerrero, he could be in the mix. Rey Mysterio could be in the mix.
Did you say Kurt Angle?
Kurt Angle could absolutely be in the mix.
Yeah, probably Kurt for me.
Kurt,
yeah. I mean, he's definitely, when it comes to technical wrestlers, I mean, it's tough to compete with him. It's so hard though. You can only pick 4. It's like, man,
but like the Mount Rushmore, like when someone is asked that question, you leave it up to their interpretation, right?
Yeah.
The biggest draws, the best matches, the longevity of career, money earned, how many promotions did they work for? What impact did they have on the industry? How many championships did they win, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're looking at championships, then Edge is on the Mount Rushmore. Because he won more championships in WWE or overall even than anyone else, right? So, but that's my point. Like, I guess that's the beauty of the question, right, Joe? Is that like you interpret it how you want to interpret it, and you put together a list based on what categories you believe to be more important than the other categories.
Sure. Yeah, no, you're exactly right there. What advice do you have for somebody that's just getting involved? Maybe they're just coming out of school, or maybe they're not going to school for it, but they're thinking, man, I would love to be an announcer of some sort, whether it be commentary or hosting. What's your advice to an up and coming, announcer?
Yeah. Don't lose the passion. Say yes to everything. Do equal parts assignments in wrestling and out of wrestling. Grow your brand and grow your demo reel in all facets. Seek advice from the people who have the jobs you would love to do. Pick their brains. Create a circle of trust and people that can mentor you and help mold you and shape you and give you counsel. Like a trust tree, or like just to surround yourself with people that lift you up and make you better. I definitely live by that you should absolutely do that. Don't stop learning. And this is a piece of advice that everyone should listen to no matter what. Be awesome to work with. Because at the end of the day, at the top especially, it's a small industry. And if you get a reputation of being someone that's difficult to work with, that's going to stick with you. Be awesome to work with. Be very pleasant. Be a team player. Always be a joy to be around. Because that's going to carry you very, very far.
And we touched briefly on WrestleMania. It's the grand spectacle. Obviously, doesn't get any bigger than WrestleMania. WrestleMania heading to Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts? First time other than Canada heading outside of the country so far. It's like we've never seen anything like that. What do you think how's that gonna go down?
I think that we're going to see more shows internationally. Yeah. The relationship with Saudi Arabia is certainly going to continue. It's going to probably give us a lot of WrestleMania moments that we maybe never thought possible. Like I wonder how outside the box creatively we're going to see things at that WrestleMania. But it also, to me, opens the door for London to get a WrestleMania, for Paris to get a WrestleMania, for Japan to get a WrestleMania. Whatever, every market is available. Every market is, can bid on a WrestleMania. To me, I think that's what my big takeaway is, that I truly believe, and you even see this with the start times now. Like I think even Crown Jewel, which is going to be our second event, second PLE on the ESPN app, yep. It's going to have an 8 a.m. start time Eastern, right? Like we're not in this era where the PLEs that are overseas or whatnot are going to start at a different time, or we're going to see things on delay, whatever the case may be. Like it's, WWE is a global brand. It has been for a very long time. And now we're seeing the effects of that in things like this. So I'll tell you what, the fans are lively. The North American fans have their work cut out for them because the fans overseas have brought it. They've created new chants. They've shown us exactly what level of what a hot crowd is now. Like
Sure.
they are the hottest crowds in the world, and we here in North America need to essentially catch up to that because they are they are setting the example.
Yeah. You're a video game world record holder, from what I hear.
I am. Thank you.
Tell us about that. How did that come about?
Yep. Listen, sometimes you just stumble upon greatness, and that's exactly me. Let me just Barry Horowitz for a second. Thank you. I have 2 records. I have one for NHL PA 93 and NHL 95. Both of them are team records. One of them is most goals scored, lopsided victory against the CPU. The other one is a 4-person record. There's a company called Twin Galaxies, which is sort of like the Guinness records for video games. And they keep track of these very official records in video games. And so I have 2. And
wow.
Look, sometimes you just, you gotta recognize as a world champion. I probably, just like Owen Hart in the Slammies, I should just carry a championship around at all times.
Yeah.
And going through customs or like a TSA check. But this title, but sorry, let me just tell you about it here. Look, I'm a video game world champion, and then just like just have it around my shoulder,
right?
Walking through the airport.
It'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
What would you say is the greatest piece of advice that you've ever received?
Going back to the be kind to everyone. I think that even more than any sort of like technical thing or any sort of like career specific thing is that people don't give enough weight to the relationships or just the interactions, communication with people, like being nice, being kind, being generous, being a good human to be around. Is undervalued by many people, and it's so important, especially in this industry. Like you just have to there's a difference between being kind. Like kindness is not weakness. That's another thing that people they misunderstand that. Kindness is not weakness. It's not saying, "Oh, I can be trampled on or I can be taken advantage of." No, it is you have your boundaries, but you are somebody who is pleasant to work with, and you're a team player, and you're collaborative, and you're not in it for yourself. Even there's always a component of that, but the collaboration is your paradigm, and kindness is your paradigm, and that's where you operate. To me, that is the biggest and best advice you can receive, first and foremost.
And when years and years from now, when you finish up your body of work, what do you want to be remembered for, your legacy?
Just that, exactly that. Someone who worked very hard, someone who tried his best. I may not be the WrestleMania main event, but I'm on the card, and I worked my ass off. I was somebody who always treated it with the level of seriousness and passion and desire and determination and effort that was required, but also went above and beyond, but also was there as a champion for other people, and was a mentor to a lot of people, someone who was in the corner of a lot of people. If I could be thanked, I think about this a lot. I think for me, my ultimate prize or goal would be if a lot of people thanked me in their award speeches. If I was one of the names listed, I think that would make me the happiest, because then I knew that I had some sort of positive, lasting impact on people. Especially in this industry. So that I strive for that. Selfishly, I have, a list of things I would love to accomplish. I have a career bucket list, and there's a lot like WWE coming back to or partnering with ESPN, and the PLEs being on the ESPN app is great for me. It allows me to add more to my career bucket list to be able to do and contribute. So continuing to cross those things off. But somebody who was great to work with, somebody who worked hard, someone who was a role model to a lot of people, and someone who inspired a lot of people to get into the industry, I think would be how I would want to be remembered ultimately.
And you are all those things. So, thank you so much for doing what you do and continue to move up and onward. And I mean, you're just accomplishing so much. So very cool stuff. And it's always a pleasure to catch up with you, Arda. Stick around for our quick bonus segment. We're going to do that in a second. Just want to thank you for taking the time to be here for the show today. And Arda Ocal, ladies and gentlemen, here on the All Access Entertainment Podcast.